Hey guys, Quick here. I'm recording this video on February 9th. Hopefully I'll get it out soon. It is one day after the Nintendo Direct, and dang, we got a very big revelation about Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and that is a tease for the Wave 4 story DLC, which will be similar in terms of scale and quality and revealing more story details to us, sort of like Torn of the Golden Country was for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So basically, this video is going to be about me kind of pitching to you guys, theorizing why I firmly believe, and I've always firmly believed, that this story DLC will be a prequel, and it will give us more insight into the world of Ionios and certain characters within the events of Xenoblade 3, and more insight onto characters from Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 as we saw in yesterday's trailer. So let's get right into it, and if you guys enjoy the Xenoblade Chronicles series and want to hear some more, maybe possibly theories on the future of the series and what I think about the DLC and stuff, hit the subscribe button, hit this like button. It really helps out the channel, and we've been seeing some really good growth on the channel lately, so let's keep on going. I really appreciate all the support. Also, fair warning, this video is going to have massive spoilers for all three Xenoblade Chronicles games. If you don't want to be spoiled, then I would suggest turning away from this video. If you don't care about spoilers, I don't mind you sticking around and watching the video, but also go do yourself a favor and play all three Xenoblade Chronicles games. All of them are amazing games, and you'll understand this theory a lot more if you have that kind of context. Without further ado, let's talk about the Xenoblade DLC, and I apologize if I'm rambling a bit, but here we go. I literally have 4 bullet points written down, and I'm just gonna go over these bullet points, and I also will have some footage of me going into Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and talking a bit about some specific things within the game that point to my theory about this being a prequel. So first of all, why do I want a prequel? I will start off by saying that. Why do I want a prequel? I want a prequel, and other people want a prequel because, first of all, it was teased in the city. In the city, you see the founders' statues, which hints at 6 party members who could be the party of the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 DLC, which would be the founders of the city and what is said to be the original Ouroboros. 3 statues are of Rex, Shulk, and Noah, sort of. We saw all 3 of them in yesterday's trailer. And on top of that, why else do I want a prequel? Well, there is a common complaint about Xenoblade 3 where it is mentioned by many, and many have voiced the concerns and complaint that there's some things about this game that should have been explained properly, but were kind of glossed over or just not explained at all. What is the true power and the true extent of the power of Ouroboros? What is the real capabilities? Where did it originate from? How did Nia create Ouroboros? And like, what can you do with that power? It was the full extent shown to us in the base game of Xenoblade 3 with the 6 party members? Or is there more that Ouroboros can do that we haven't seen? That is one. The other is, where did the Sword of Origin come from? Where did Lucky 7 come from? That is the big main point of this whole theory. I personally think that the origins of Lucky 7 and the Sword of Origin will be explained in the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 DLC. Not only will it be explained, I think it's going to be the whole point of the story. I think the whole point of the story is going to be, we need to forge this blade so we stand a chance against Mobius. Why else would we want a prequel? Well, we want to know more about the founders, we want to know about the city, we also want to know about some relationships with characters, why does Melia know who Riku is and vice versa? Why does Riku know who Melia is. We saw that little small kind of exchange at the end of Xenoblade 3 in the final dungeon in Origin. Maybe that can lend into the theory that Riku had a hand in creating Lucky 7, and Melia was in on this plan with the founders as well. Where did Rex and Shulk come from? We know that Zed needed, I'll just call them the quote-unquote developers of Origin. He needed one of them to help out in his whole cycle of the Endless Now. So he put in Nia and Melia within his Ionios simulation. But why would Rex and Shulk be in there? That is another question which we would need to be answered. So I guess we can talk about now, why do I think it is a prequel? Well, first of all, I think it is a prequel because of one particular character. Yeah, you can say this is a sequel because Rex and Shulk are older, and this could take place years and years after the events of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, when the characters have grown up after time has started yet again in Bionis and Alrest. But I think the character that seals the deal that this is, at least part of it will be a prequel, is this character right here. And that is essentially probably the founder of House Van Damme. And he's got a very similar look to Fei Fong Wong from Xenogears, and he's also got a very striking resemblance to Noah as well. He says this line. He says something along the lines of, like killing Granddad was not enough for you. Long story short, I might explain this later on in the video, but basically, this guy, let's call him, there's a lot of Van Dammes in the story. Let's call this guy you see right here, let's call him Mr. Van Damme. Because we got Guernica, we got Monica, we got Gondor, and we got Van Damme from Xenoblade 2. So to separate all these Van Dammes, let's call this guy Mr. Van Damme. So Mr. Van Damme, as you see right here, who looks like Faye and Noah and N, his granddad, long story short, is N. And N became a Mobius. So, like killing Granddad was not enough for you. Who else would have killed Granddad? Could it be Zed? He very much could be talking about Zed, but Zed didn't necessarily kill him. Zed's laws killed N, because N reached his 10th term and died. So yes, maybe Zed could be responsible, but Zed was also responsible for turning him into a Mobius. So maybe Zed wasn't responsible for this. I personally think that Mr. Van Damme is talking to the villain we see in the trailer, and that is Alvis. So that brings me to my next point over here. Who is Alvis? So, Alvis is, in my opinion, the bridge that connects all three Xenoblade Chronicles games. And for that reason, when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was announced, I was really hoping that Alvis would be present, and furthermore, I was hoping that Alvis would be like the main villain of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. So this wish is kind of getting fulfilled, and I'm very happy and grateful for that. So why and how is Alvis the bridge between these three games? Let me give you a little history lesson. So at the end of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, so Klaus / the architect explains that to create this new world of Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2, he used what is called as the Trinity Processor Core, and it is powered by the most powerful, most grand artifact in the world, that is the Conduit. The Conduit gives powers to three cores, Ontos, Logos, and Pneuma. And we later find out that Logos is Malos, and Pneuma is Pyrrhus / Mithra. Klaus later explains that Ontos triggered some space-time continuum shenanigans and went all the way to another kind of pocket dimension somewhere else. Immediately, many Xenoblade fans said, hey, what if this guy is Alvis? That has to be Alvis from Xenoblade 1, that really mysterious guy who's like out of nowhere just knows the kind of inner workings of the universe and what it means to be a god and all that. This could explain how he has that power. And guess what? In the original Xenoblade Chronicles 1, Alvis had like a necklace, and the pendant of that necklace was originally, it was just a key. Well, in Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, which is the remake/remaster, that key has now been changed to a core crystal. And the same core crystal that is used to awaken Numa and Logos. So, that essentially means that Alvis is an Aegis, just like Pyra/Mithra and Malos. He is an Aegis, but on top of that, he has very powerful conduit energy, which allows him to move between worlds, and he is very much aware of what's going on in both worlds. Let's just put it at that for now. Here's the big question of this theory. Why is Alvis evil? Like, what did he do? Like, who ticked him off so much to make him turn evil like this? He's literally got Zanza's wings. He's taking the role of Zanza, so what kind of flip the switch there? This is gonna be kind of out there, but hear me out. Many of us Xenoblade fans have noticed that there are many Mobius in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but there are actually 25 Mobius, and the alphabet has 26 letters. We have Mobius B all the way to Mobius Z. So where's Mobius A? Where's Console A? There he is. It's Alvis. So basically at the end of Xenoblade 1, Alvis asks Shulk, "What do you wish for, Shulk, now that you have the power of a god?" Shulk says, "I wish for a world with no gods, where every person has the right to choose their own future." Well, what did people of Xenoblade 1 and 2 want with their future? They did not want the Origin experiment to succeed. They were afraid. They were afraid of what would happen. They were afraid of losing their homes and losing the people that they loved. They were apprehensive, nervous, afraid, scared. Thus, Alvis, granting Shulk's wish, created Mobius. Alvis, as Console A, was the beginning of the alphabet that is the long curse of Mobius. He created the concept of Mobius, and he created this desire for the endless now, and thus manifesting the being that is Z, X, and Y, and thus giving them and bestowing them the power to grant this Mobius energy and power of immortality, of the endless now, of stagnation. It all stemmed from Alvis himself. Another thing I kind of thought as well is maybe Alvis wants to maintain order within Bionis. You see, Future Connected was created for a reason. So where did all these rifts come from? What are these fog beasts? Like, what are these fog beasts? Fog beasts, in my opinion, are the precursor to the annihilation events that kind of cancel things out. When matter from Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 are forced together so much, they cause an annihilation event and just cancel each other out. Maybe he senses Alrest, because these two worlds are slowly colliding, as Nia told us in her kind of backstory, that these worlds yearn for each other. They're kind of like magnets coming together. But Alvis doesn't want that. He wants to maintain order. He wants to be rid of any kind of influence. So all these rifts and fog beasts and annihilation events, he doesn't want any of that. So maybe his kind of resistance kind of gets into the minds of people in Bionis, causing this turmoil and stir that leads to the creation of Mobius. You could say, oh, maybe then this is like a prequel even before Ionios is created. Well, I think Alvis had something to do within the laws of Ionios itself as well. So I still think if Mr. Van Damme, Rex, and Shulk are all three present within this Xenoblade 3 DLC, I think it's going to be a solid prequel. And if you guys aren't truly fully convinced, here's a little more evidence that I found within the game of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 itself, so we can look into that. Let's go inside here. In here, and around chapter 5, the Monica Van Damme comes to introduce you to these founders. And immediately when I got here, I was like, story DLC. Has to be the story DLC. Because, like, it's not as blatant as the breadcrumbs in Xenoblade 2 telling you, oh, the story DLC is gonna be about Torn of the Golden Country, but it is also very obvious, like, why would they have these characters here? Why else would they have these characters here? Just for visual spectacle, I don't know. But let's see. Let's read up on a few of them. We're gonna look at 3 people in particular. Let's look at this guy first. Oh god, I can't. So, first of all, he looks pretty familiar to someone we know, and that person is Shulk. House Reed. You know who also is a House Reed? Shania was House Reed. In memory of the founder of House Reed and the city's liberatrix. Rather than the founder himself, this statue depicts the founder's mentor figure, standing as a sign of the deep reverence and devotion she felt for her teacher. The founder's master was unconnected to her by bonds of blood, yet he raised her as would befit a child of one's own, it is said. Though of a calm and constant disposition, the sight of him on the battlefield, great red sword in hand, struck fear into many Mobius. This basically describes Shulk. Calm and constant disposition. Basically Shulk, unless he can get angry. So he can get angry sometimes, but most of the time Shulk is very calm and he's got a level head. The sight of him on the battlefield, great red sword in hand. That is the Minato, which we saw in yesterday's trailer. Shulk is wielding the Minato. Struck fear into many a Mobius. But did it strike fear into Alvis? We'll see about that. And though the vicious struggle against Mobius cost this ferocious warrior his right arm. So maybe you will see Shulk eventually lose his right arm. The loss did nothing to diminish his desire to hone his martial skills each day, standing as vivid testament to his indomitable will. So, yeah, that's basically Shulk, and he was the mentor to the founder of House Reed, and this founder is described as a woman. I'm thinking it's going to be an ancestor of Shania. It would be kind of cool if they do the whole Niall Hugo thing where Shania comes back, but like they use the same model as Shania but as a different person. This guy looks pretty familiar as well, as you can see. I mean, from yesterday's trailer, as well as someone we know from a past Xenoblade game. Let's read up about him. House Cassini. In memory of the founder of House Cassini and the city's liberatrix. Much like with the founder of Reed, this statue too depicts this founder's respected mentor rather than the founder herself. Again, another female founder, but this is their mentor. Just like how Shulk was the mentor to House Reed, this, who I think is Rex, is the mentor to House Cassini. Much like the founder of House Reed 2, this depicts the founder's mentor. This mentor boosted a robust physique, wielding 2 great swords at once with utmost ease and facing down Mobius despite the loss of one eye. 2 great swords at ease. That's definitely the Pyra and Mithra Aegis swords that Rex was wielding in yesterday's trailer, and I knew instantly when I saw this guy, when I read his description, it is Rex, and the next sentence is going to seal it, as this statue is Rex. He lived his life an unsophisticated sort, broad-minded but impassioned, and is said to have aided the founders in the fight against Mobius physically and spiritually. This also sounds like Rex. Very, like, open-minded kind of guy, but very positive and very, like, just kind of a genuine kind of guy. Very, very good person to be around. He was further reported to have a free spirit whose qualities influenced the other founders, still young and impressible when the city was restored. So this could mean that despite Shulk and Rex suffering major injuries, Shulk losing his arm, Rex losing his eye, they still make it through till the end to see the city rebuilt here at the Great Sword's base. So this is Rex. Free spirit, qualities influenced by others, that's literally Rex from Xenoblade 2. He's got that really infectious, positive personality. Indelible proof of this rebellious spirit can be seen time and again in the ethos of the house in generations to come. I may be wrong, but Gondor's father and Monica's husband could have been a Cassini, which gives Gondor that kind of Rex-like spirit, because Gondor reminds me of Rex, but a more harsher Rex. So that is Rex. That is the person we saw in yesterday's trailer. So these two are mentors of the founders. We saw him in yesterday's trailer, and these founders were in the past. But there's one more I want to talk about. It's this guy. This guy, many people think that he resembles the one and only Fei Fong Wong from Xenogears, which is Tetsuya Takahashi's first game, which has influenced many of his later games, like Xenoblade 1, Xenoblade 2, and much notably Xenoblade 3. Xenoblade 3 shares a lot of Xenogears references. I might make a video on that later on, but let's read up about who we think looks like Faye. House Vandam. Whoa. That's Vandam from Xenoblade 2. It's Vandam from Xenoblade 3, which is Guernica, Monica, and Gondor. 3 Vandams, there's a 4th. And he looks like Faye, but he also looks exactly like Noah. So, let's read up about him. In memory of the founder of House Vandam, the city's restorer and liberator, the original incarnation of the city was once laid to ruin by Mobius N's hand. So, you guys remember what that is. Hope's Rest. That's talked about right at the end of chapter 5, or no, sorry, the beginning of chapter 6. M takes you to Hope's Rest, which is kind of close to Agnes Castle. And she was like, this is where the original city was, but this is the city that N destroyed. And yeah. So I guess we're gonna see that in this prequel DLC, if it is a prequel, which I'm guessing. The founder realized fully the power of Ouroboros and fought against N, ousting him. Once victorious, he gathered the old city's people, scattered to the winds, and re-established the city. So, of course, once Hope's Rest was destroyed, he gathered everyone in the city and rebuilt the city here. With the city restored, he left its government in the hands of the founder Doyle, who is right over there, who kind of looks like Mio, and departed on a lonely expedition. No records exist of his fate thereafter. Heirs of Vandam's lineage only returned to the new city several centuries later. Oral tradition is that the founder was master of the classical art of fistfighting, and the scions of House Vandam carry on the customs to this day. And that is true. Guernica was a fist fighter, so is Gondor. Oh, by the way, you know who else was a fist fighter? Faye. Faye from Xenogears, so that's a cool little Easter egg. So, basically, Hope's Rest will be destroyed if this is a prequel DLC. And I'm not considering that to be the final fight anymore. It might be in the middle of the DLC story. The story will be about rebuilding or forging the Sword of Origin, or forging Lucky 7. But the important thing is Hope's Rest will be destroyed, and then the latter half of the DLC story will be about rebuilding the city here at the Great Sword's base at Sword March. So here's the cool thing about the extent of Ouroboros. So as you can see, this character right here, we're dubbing him Mr. Van Damme, right? But supposedly he has a sister who is Doyle. Her name is Doyle, and she has a lot of similarities to Mio. And as you can see here, Mr. Van Damme is using Mio's Ouroboros, the Mio Ouroboros that we are familiar with in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which has some resemblance to Cosmos from Xenosaga. So, is this Doyle's Ouroboros, and how is he using it? Because Ouroboros, as we know, is used when a Kavessian and Agnian interlink. So, I don't really think interlinking is happening here. So is this similar to when a Mobius just transforms into their Mobius form by themselves and without interlinking? That could be a possibility, and something we don't know about Ouroboros yet, and this prequel DLC can go more in depth into. So here's another kind of question about a certain relationship that I have from Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Who was N and M's son? Well, we see him as a baby, we see him a little bit grown up as like a young child or a toddler. And we don't know his name. His name was very purposely omitted from the game. And then we see N pass away, we see M pass away, and he's alone. But we can sort of assume that this guy is related to the person we see in this Xenoblade Chronicles 3 DLC trailer, who I have now dubbed as Mr. Van Damme. What is the relationship between N and this guy, Mr. Van Damme, or like Noah's ancestor? So let's go over a few bullet points on why I think this is a prequel and why I am very excited for it. First of all, there's a lot of questions to be answered. The origin of the Sword of Origin, the full extent of the power of Ouroboros, why do certain characters have this connection with each other, especially Melia and Riku? Why are Shulk and Rex in Ionios? And who is Mr. Van Damme? Is he N's grandson? Who I think he most likely is. On top of that, the other reason why it's a prequel DLC is because these founder statues were heavily hinted and very prominently shown to us in a story cutscene in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And on top of that, 3 of these founder statues were seen in the trailer in the Nintendo Direct. And that was Shulk, who was the mentor of House Reed, Rex, who was the mentor of House Cassini, and Mr. Van Damme himself. Yes. So the founders have been hinted at, and the questions remain. All these questions and all these revelations about the founders can be told in a prequel DLC. What's more is Alvis, the first console, Console A or Mobius A, was hinted in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 to be Ontos, who was sent into another pocket dimension to help populate and rebuild and govern the world of Xenoblade 1. And then, in Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, we see he has a core crystal. So it makes that connection even stronger. So Alvis is the true link and connection between all three of these games, along with, of course, Professor Klaus's story and all of that. So Alvis being the first Mobius makes sense because we're missing a console A, and Alvis sensing these rifts of these worlds coming together and these worlds coming closer, he feels the need to kind of spark this uncertainty. But why? That is the question that we will see answered within the story DLC of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. So here's how the story of this prequel DLC will play out from my theory crafting I've done here. So basically Alvis as the first Mobius will kickstart the whole rise of Mobius as an entity, Mobius as a concept, and thus would lead to the failure of the origin experiment. Then we'll meet the founders, go on an adventure with these founders and Vandam, Rex, and Shulk, as well as the others, Ortiz, Cassini, Reed, Rhodes, Doyle as well. This whole party, their goal will be to create Lucky 7 or the Sword of Origin to stand a chance against Mobius. They do this with the help of their allies like Melia, Nia, and of course everyone's favorite Nopon, Riku. In the middle of this story, I can see Hope's Rest being destroyed by Mobius, and the latter half of the story would be to rebuild the new city at Sword March and get revenge against Alvis and Zed, who started off this whole cycle to begin with. Unfortunately, I think we will see Shulk and Rex bite the dust, but I do think that they'll be waiting for us back in Allrest and Bionis once the flow of time goes back to normal at the end of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. So here are some quick reasons why this could be actually a sequel instead of a prequel. I've been advocating for a prequel, but maybe I am wrong. So here are a few reasons why. First of all, obviously Shulk and Rex are notably much older. Of course, we saw the founders' statues in the city, but maybe this is actually post-Ionios, after the origin experiment, because we saw Rex maybe in his mid-20s in the picture at the end of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which is a little bit before the origin experiment flaw happened, which resulted in Ionios. Maybe if time goes back to normal, everything is normal again in Allrest and Bionis, maybe they grow up and this DLC takes place later into the future when they're grown up. Another reason is this location you see right here, and that is most definitely the Bionis leg, or Gower Plains from Xenoblade 1. And of course, once the origin experiment succeeds and the flow of time is returned to normal, it would make sense that we could possibly play this DLC and it could be set in the Bionis leg. Possibly. But here's the thing. I still think this is a prequel because the idea of Bionis leg being in Ionios, to me, kind of makes sense. Because if you think about it, at the start of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Noah says something along the lines of, Ionios, our world is dying, and we slowly understand that to be the annihilation events that are slowly eating away at Ionios bit by bit when so much matter from Xenoblade 1 and 2 are so closely linked together that it just causes an annihilation event canceling both of them out. So my theory is, if this is a prequel, this area we see here in the Bionis leg could possibly be an older version of the Aisha region, or however you pronounce it, in Ionios. Because at the start of Xenoblade 3, a lot of these areas are very eroded and destroyed, and the land masses and the landmarks are just kind of crumbled and kind of decaying because of these annihilation events. So maybe this is early Ionios, when a lot of these annihilation events just didn't really take a toll on the world of Ionios as much as it is doing now in the present of Xenoblade 3. One last thing I wanted to talk about, and it is why I don't think we need a sequel DLC. And honestly, I see a lot of people saying we need a sequel DLC to see what happens to the party members after Xenoblade 3. Like, we need to see them reunite again, we need to see Noah and Mio reunite again. I understand that, but do you really want that beautiful reunion, or the results of this beautiful reunion again with these friends and lovers? Do you want that to be reserved for like a 15 to 20 hour DLC? Or do you want it to be reserved for an entire 60 plus hour full length game, which could be Xenoblade Chronicles 4, or whatever the future of the series has? I 100% think we are going to see the future of these characters. Whatever happens, we're gonna see Noah and Mio together, or like just these friends reunite in some way. Maybe if we don't see them reunite, we'll see the results of that in a game which takes place in the actual, genuine, real, combined universes of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, which is not the Ionios simulation. And I wouldn't want that to be in a small little 10 to 15 hour DLC side story. I want that reserved for its own game. But I will say this, no matter if it's a prequel or a sequel, whatever it's going to be, it's still going to be great. It's still going to be a great story, and I'm very excited to see Shulk and Rex back again, with Alvis, of course, and of course, Mr. Van Damme. Yeah, but if it's a sequel, I'm still going to enjoy it, I'm still going to love it. If it's a prequel and a sequel, then that's even better. It's going to be a really interesting story that Takahashi will have cooked up for us, so I'm very excited for that. I'm just very excited to play this whenever it releases. I still think it is going to be a prequel, but we won't know until we actually get our hands on the game and play it, because there's going to be a lot of surprises in store for us, so we'll see. So let me know what you think of this theory. This is very off script and very choppily put together. I apologize for that. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments below. I will try to answer them as best as I can. And yeah, if you enjoyed this, give it a like, subscribe for more content on Zelda, Xenoblade, RPGs, and video games in general. And yeah, it's been great, and this is Mishquick signing off. Have a great day and play some great games today. Later.